In this resource, I want to cover a few key topics we're going to need to know throughout the rest of this semester. You've probably been hearing a lot about animation passes, types of keyframes like keys, extremes, and breakdowns. And lately we've been talking about animating shapes with leaders and followers. In this resource, I want to break down exactly what we're talking about here and how to use what we've learned to animate something a little bit more complicated. To recap from last week, in order to create something like a jumping ball, we have to first think of what keys we have to have. The ball is going to be sitting resting, then it's going to be up in the air, and then it'll be down on the ground again. And then we added in extremes for anticipation and overshoot, so the ball can gather energy before it jumps and absorb the energy when it lands. And once we have keys and extremes established, we can set timing and play the animation until it starts feeling correct. And at that point, we'll add in some timing charts and a variety of breakdowns depending on what we need the motion to do. Remembering that breakdowns aren't just in-betweens. They're used to create mood, set spacing, and define arcs in movement as well. And for my jumping ball, I wanted it to be a little bit squishy, so at the very end, I added multiple overshoots to make it go back and forth before coming to a complete rest. So what I've done is I've taken the jumping ball and I've animated it on twos. First, I created the keys and extremes, and then figured out the timing with the breakdowns. I color-coded each frame as well, so it's really easy to go back and forth and figure out which one is which. So here's my keys in red: the starting pose, the highest point in the jump, and then the ending pose at the very end. And then if you look at the anticipation, which is orange for the next extreme, it ducks down before a breakdown, shooting off the table, and then one as it slows down towards the top before that top key. And then it reverses direction, slowly falling back towards the ground. I added a lot of breakdowns in here to show that slow motion as it starts to pick up speed and stretch, and finally striking the table before it squishes, and then the overshoot where it really squishes heavy and then bounces up too far, and then too far again a little bit, and then down a bit too far, and then back to the circle. And if we play that back, we can see the animation is pretty thorough. And up on the top here, added in some notes to describe exactly what's going on at each frame. So as you progress, you can see that one I made it into a keyframe, and I labeled it as the start. E is for extreme. This is the anticipation of the squash before the jump, and then some breakdowns explaining why I added those in there as well. This file will be available to download in this week's resource. And if you've been following along in the resources, this is about where we're at in the course. At this point, you should be comfortable with some sort of workflow of your own. This might mean starting with identifying the keys and then the extremes, then setting timing by adjusting those few frames to feel correct on playback, and then use timing charts between each key/extreme to figure out where that breakdown would go to create slow in and slow out. So what happens if, like for this week's assignment, if I apply this same thinking to something like a very simple character I designed with two shapes? This character is going to be just a triangle with a circle for a head. I'm definitely not going to worry about legs or arms or anything else at this point, just these two shapes for now. And if we keyframe, or what I'm going to refer to as block this animation, we're basically going to follow the same steps as the jumping ball. So for instance, I've defined the keys and extremes for this new character. So the character starts off standing, and then in order to tell the story, it has to be up high, and then it has to be down low. So I've created the keys with the exact same timing as the jumping ball. I'm using the jumping ball as a guide. Now again, I've animated these side by side for a few reasons. Number one, I love to see them side by side. It's an immediate learning experience for me to see them that way. But in the real world, I probably would have animated these over one another so I could really match this action carefully. The other reason I love animating them side by side is because onion skinning. If you put it on for a couple shapes and they're all overlapping, like, you're going to get lost immediately. So having them side by side and dealing with them one at a time sometimes can be helpful, and also help us to focus on one thing at a time. So in this instance, I have just a very simple layer set up. I have one layer for the head and one layer for the triangle, and then I just created again those keys, also the extremes, where just the head and the body sort of squished together as one unit, and then they stand back up, shoot up into the air, squish again, go back up for that resting pose, that final key. And if we play this back, it actually doesn't look that bad so far. It looks like the character is jumping. It definitely squashes to gather energy. It definitely has a lot of hang time, and then you can see it absorb the landing before it goes back up. And since this is referred to as blocking, All we have right now are keys, extremes, and very accurate timing. So the next step I thought would be to animate another pass, and this time consider the breakdowns or just add the breakdowns in. So let's see what that looks like with the breakdowns added in. Okay, again, the entire character travels as a unit. Even though I do have the head and the body on different layers, I chose to have them travel together as if they were drawn on one layer together. And this is how we're going to start each animation. What beginners do is they stop right here. They continue treating the body as one shape. What we need to understand is the character is not one shape. And this is simple because it's only two little shapes. And in this case, it does look kind of cute jumping up and down like that. But when we end up with a whole person, imagine if we just take the whole character and just squish it when it jumps. Like, that's not going to work. The legs have to bend, the hips have to drop, the shoulders have to even drop down where the hips are, and the head has to drop down even further so it can gain that complete energy before it launches way up into the air. The body kind of folds up in a certain order, and then it unfolds in a certain order to project the energy upwards. And that all has to happen in a certain way in order for the jump to happen. So what I did for this next one is I really thought carefully about what we learned last week with overlap. For instance, like an antenna on a head. When the head stops, the antenna is going to continue moving and buoying. It's almost like they're really part of the same thing, but they're really two different things, but sort of interact with each other in that one is a leader and one's a follower. So here we have two shapes. Which one's the leader and which one's the follower? In this case, I'm just going to go with the triangle or the body as the leader. It's most often the hips are the leader if you're not sure. So with this next animation, that's exactly what I did. I just animated the triangle and it matches the jumping ball because that was already done. So I didn't have to reinvent the shape. I had the jumping ball to reference and use as a guide. Once I knew where the triangle was supposed to be, according to my original plans that I had done before, I was able to go back and add the head layer in. But you really had to think about where the head's going to be. So for instance, in the next frame, when the body squishes down, the head really hasn't done anything yet. It just stays still because the body hasn't pulled it yet. The body's reacting first and the head waits one turn. In the next turn, or the next set of frames, you can see that the head does finally drop, and it drops in kind of a silly way. It drops too far, right? And then the body's jumping, and now the head's completely off and trying to catch up. Eventually it catches up when the body slows down, and then the body slows down, but the head keeps going past, and finally it gets pulled back down with the body, and it follows the body back down. So you can see the head kind of moves at a different rate. It follows the body, it overlaps the same motion of the body, but it's offset by just a few frames behind. And these are hard terms to understand at first. So here's what I had to do, and this is surprisingly simple, and it doesn't always work, but this is kind of a neat thing to do. So in this first animation here, let me hide some, and bear with me here, I'm doing a live recording. Live recordings never go as according to plan. So let's hide some of these so we can just see these two, right? You think of these two as totally different animations, right? Like I animated them separately, but they're not. All I did was I took the blocking idea. Okay, so here's the head. We know the head is delayed after the body. So I took the head layer right here. I took all my frames and I moved them over 2 frames like this. That's it. I took the first frame and copied it and put it back over here. So now the animations are identical. So all I did, I literally offset the layer by 2 frames. So the ball happens 2 frames after the triangle does. Okay, so I'm going to undo that, but look at the difference, what that really creates. In the animation on the left, we have the body acting as a unit and squishing and squashing and stretching together. On the body on the right, we have the body and the head acting independently, and it has a very different effect. Next, I'm going to turn on a version where I didn't let the head get too far away. So for instance, in this version where in the middle one, at some point the head comes completely off. So I didn't let that happen on the one on the right. I adjusted it. Okay, but here's the key. When you're dealing with these followers, is you have to go back afterwards and you have to see if they work. And the way that you do that is you hide the leader and you put onion skinning on just for the follower. And then you look, and is this your timing chart? That's what you want to ask yourself. What's the timing chart here? Okay, so the timing chart looks like this. And you have to check. The ball starts off slow, it jumps, and then it starts slowing down. Does my ball follow an accurate timing chart? It does. If this looked like this, I'd be very concerned right now, and I would adjust the circles to match a better timing chart. So this is what you have to do with your followers. You don't have to create a timing chart first, but you do have to go back later with the onion skinning and make sure that the follower has a motion of its own. Another way you can check that is you can actually just play it with only the follower showing. And this will give you a good idea. If the follower feels good on its own, then that also means it's working. And then I started thinking, now that I'm getting comfortable animating these shapes and they're starting to look correct, I was like, well, what if I put arms and hair on my character, right? How would those things interact? So what I like to do is draw them rigid. And what I mean by that is you'll see when I play, you see that the hands and the hair stay the same place. They don't overlap or do anything special yet. It's too hard for me to do all these steps at once. So I animate them rigid, which means I put them where they're supposed to be each frame. Notice the hair is centered on the head and the arms are always out to the side at the same angle. But that's not how they're gonna be. So what I would do at this point is I would actually take out or hide certain layers. Let's stop this. And I would, for instance, know that I already have the head following the body. Okay? The arms are gonna follow the body next. So what I might do is take the arms and I might say, well, at this pose, maybe the arm, for instance, if I select the arm layer, maybe this right arm would be up like this more. Okay, and it'd be stretched out because it's going up or down. I don't know. You'd have to figure that out. Okay, but each frame you could just change the arms and make it do what you think it's going to do. Okay, again, remembering to put onion skinning on so you can see if the hands are following a nice smooth motion path and sort of a visual timing chart of slowing down and speeding up as well. As for the hair, you can do the same thing except for the fact that the hair is not going to follow the body. The hair is going to follow the head. So in this case, I found it really helpful to turn off the arms and the body and just show the head. And then when you animate the hair, I tracked the hair according to the head. I didn't even worry about the body or the arms because the hair is following the head. It doesn't really care what the body or arms are doing. The only way it would care is if somehow the body or arms interfered with the hair, but in this story, they don't. And I gotta tell you, turning the layers on and off and trying them out individually, trying to see if I can get one to follow the next, it kind of became a fun little game of dragging the layers and frames around to see if I could offset them and just playing around and seeing if I can get it to work. And there's some frames in here that really surprised me. So I'll just scrub through before I play it and just show you a couple. Is definitely that, you know, the body spikes up through the head, but I'm not worried about realism. I'm worried more about the feeling that you get here. Does it feel correct? Is the motion clear and accurate, right? I'm not worried about the shapes. This is one that I thought was funny, is that the hair actually lagged so far behind, I decided to make it come out behind the body, and like all of a sudden, maybe the character's looking up, right? And the hair is all of a sudden pulling really far, okay? And then again, the hair is really long. And then I decided when it comes up, it's gonna finally catch up and shoot past, right? And as the whole body drops, the hair is still going up. So it really stretches and stretches a lot coming down before it comes down. And as the body's going back up, that's when the hair starts squishing. So notice here, the head comes back up, but the hair is squished the most. And then the hair starts popping back up. And then I have the hair overshoot even more than the head did. So it continues bouncing around long afterwards. So the head stopped completely and the hair still bounces for 4 or 5 frames afterwards. So if we see this in motion, you see again another huge difference between animation number 1, which is keyframing, or what I'm going to refer to as blocking plus. That is an awesome place to start and it's a great pass. After that, You need to start figuring out how overlap affects the individual shapes, which is why we're keeping our animations to very simple 2 or 3 shapes this week. As you watch this, which character has the most weight? Which one has the most life? Which one has the most exaggeration? Which one's the most interesting to watch? We might not agree on which one it is. I like each of these for what it is in its own way, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But the different effects you can get by going farther and farther than just blocking are quite amazing, and that's what this week is all about. I really want you to try and play and see how many characters, how many different kinds of jumps. Can you make a jump that's, instead of hopping like this one is, like they're jumping over something for fun, can you make them jumping like they're driving up to reach something high or dunking a basketball? That's a very different jump. And you could get those jumps. You could use reference videos to find out how that action works. How long do they squat? How long do they anticipate? How do they launch off the ground? Is it faster? Is it slower? What sort of timing chart would you use to describe that motion? And this is animating. This is the difference between drawing pictures that look like they move and actually animating. And next week, we're going to take this one step farther. So whatever character you create this week, fall in love with it. We're going to use it again next week for take it on a little bit of a longer adventure and try some different things out with it.